And there is a growing awareness of the impact and effects of trauma upon the mind of those who've survived overwhelming stress from intense situations. But there continues to be skepticism regarding the notion of repressed memories. Do survivors of trauma in fact experience repressed memories? A kind of psychological protection from the emotional impact of the event, which creates a kind of amnesia, which essentially pushes the memory away, down into the depths of the mind, which prevents conscious awareness but surface in the form of triggers, depression, panic attacks, night terrors, compulsions, and addictions. The answer is yes. And we will hear from a U.S. military combat veteran who was seriously wounded in battle, who has experienced all of those for the past 40 years, while recalling only a part of what he lived through in the midst of war. What is it like to live with suppressed memories? We'll hear a first-hand account and how there is the ability to regain some of those memories to help with the healing process, next on this special edition of Journey to Healing. Welcome to Journey to Healing. Do you find yourself discouraged, troubled, in need of healing, but not sure where to turn? John Euler, a licensed professional counselor, is here to help. John has more than 30 years of professional experience, helping people deal with the issues that keep them emotionally and spiritually stuck. There is help. There really is hope. There is a God who loves you, who wants to help you find peace and strength. And John Euler is here to help you find that on this edition of Journey to Healing.
Bert, thank you for joining us on Survivor Support, the podcast that is dedicated to helping those that have experienced trauma. Usually we focus on sexual abuse, but trauma is trauma. The more profound the trauma, the greater the impact. And as Bessel van der Kolk has written in his book, you and I are both aware of that, The Body Keeps the Score, he started his work with veterans. And Bert, you and I have a mutual friend, and it became clear that you have a story. Actually, there's a couple of very compelling stories. And so we're going to focus really part one of this two-part episode of your experience in Panama. There was an invasion of Panama on the U.S. part under George Bush the First, President Bush. And you as a young adult were thrust into that. So we're going to look at that. And then there was a subsequent, though very different experience that you had. To help people stay tuned for part two, you actually saw a very dramatic situation unfold in front of you, which had to do with the murder-suicide of a family. But for purposes of part one, we're talking to you, Bert, a veteran, well, kind of way back when. It's been about 40 years. And,
getting close, yeah.
Right? And you have continued to wrestle with PTSD. So part of the purpose of this particular episode is to help raise awareness on the part of the public, also part of those of us that are in the mental health field, to help really sensitize us to the very real impact of trauma, and especially for those that have served and those that saw combat. So, Bert, would you take us back just briefly, and kind of set the stage? Tell us, as a matter of fact, you went through an incident prior to actually Panama. You were on an aircraft carrier, so we'll have you describe that. We do have about a 30-minute time frame, but I'm going to bring up then, once we start talking about your combat experience, I'm going to play a video which will sort of kind of bring you back a little bit, and you're going to be able to narrate for us, what are the soldiers, what are the personnel feeling, what's going through their mind, so that we can have a sense of appreciation for the impact of what you went through, which is you were wounded and medevaced out, but you were involved in fighting for 3 days. But as I recall correctly, if I recall correctly, you only recall about a day and a half of that whole unfolding situation. So we will see that. But set the stage for us as far as you went into, I want to say the Navy first, or did you or were you?
I started out in the Army National Guard a couple of years prior, but I wanted to travel. And that's what brought me to the Navy. I talked to my command in the National Guard and I said, look, I want to go
And
active.
what year? I'm sorry, Bert, what year?
That would have been in 87, 86, 87. I signed up in 86, went through Army boot camp for the National Guard. I was stationed out in Utah, and I got wanderlust. I wanted to go travel the world. I didn't want to be stuck in a guard unit doing weekend warrior stuff. So I turned around. I said, what would it take for me to go active? And they said, all you need is a letter from your command releasing you. And you come in and we'll unfortunately have to send you through boot camp again. So yes, I've been through 2 boot camps. I went to Fort Jackson for the Army. And that was in early part of 87. I couldn't give you exact dates. Then I flipped around and I did about a year in the National Guard. And like I said, I didn't really like it. It wasn't to my taste. I was enjoying what I was learning, but I wanted to travel. Talked to him, got permission, and I found myself that following few months at the end of 87, bouncing into Navy down in San Diego. Went through boot camp there. I went through my basic training, went through my AIT school, A school, whatever you want to call it. And I have a hard time sometimes because I went both Army and Navy, so I've been trained both.
Oh, that's
I
right.
may make references to either one. Army, for example, we say Roger that. Navy, we say aye, sir. So sometimes and I got in trouble for that a lot in the military because I would say aye, sir, and I was in one or the other, and it would kind of mess me up. Or I say Roger that in the Navy, they kind of look at me funny. But yes, I went through my schooling. By the time, what reference to this particular thing was I was a damage controlman. I made it up to second class eventually, but I was only a damage recruit fireman at the time. And I was E4, not quite E5 yet. I was E4, and they gave me permission to go to cross training. The branches of the service at that time allowed for Marines could train with Navy could train with Air Force, Marines, etc. We could all interswap for different schools. Certain schools, certain tiers of schools were allowed to be trained in certain areas. To set the stage, what sent me to Panama? I got a line
Actually,
on
Bert,
a school.
before we talk about that, talk about you were involved, you were on a carrier.
Oh, yes.
And there was a fire. Remind us what's the name of the carrier and describe that, because that was traumatizing enough in and of itself. You almost died.
Yes. August 2nd and 3rd, I was on the USS Constellation. I'd only been on board about, I think 9 months-ish, less than a year. So I was still learning the ship, still learning my job. I was doing the best I could at it. I was not in a power position. I was not a leader, but I was a fireman, which means I was middle. I was a worker bee. I'll say it that way. I was learning my job, working it, doing it. And we had a fire breakout. One main machinery room exploded. I'm not going to go into a lot of details of how it exploded, but it was due to a faulty or closed down fuel line for jet fuel to fuel the aircraft up on the carrier deck, up on the flight deck. Through our uptake system, which is where air gets sucked into the boilers, like an intake of a car that sucks air into the boilers so the boilers can burn. That line ran through that space. It was a line that had been shut down, red tagged. What that means is it's closed for no use. Somebody up on the flight deck started refueling an aircraft, and we weren't even clear. We were actually on our way out to sea. The ship was under its own power, going out to sea. We were clearing Point Loma, coming out of San Diego. We hadn't you're supposed to legally be so many miles offshore before you refuel aircraft. Well, this yo-yo decided he was going to go refuel his aircraft early to get his job done early. He broke the rules. What he didn't know is the line he was using was pumping fuel right down in on top of and spilling jet fuel on top of our boilers down in the main space. And that's what I understand. I was not the guy pumping it. I don't know for sure, but this is the story we were told. I was part of what they call the flying squad. We are a group of people who are the first responders, firefighters, and damage controlmen on board the ship. We have about 200 of us, roughly, and we rapid respond to any flood or fire or damage to the ship. We got a call, fire reported one main machinery room. To us, that is the most scary call we could ever receive, because that could disable and sink the ship, theoretically. We responded. my job was hosman. I get on whatever hose they assign me to, and it's a verbal command. So there's nothing in writing. It's just get on hose 1, spot 3. And I already know what that means. I head for my spot. I got halfway there, and I was literally in a passageway between both sides of the ship, port and starboard side. It was called the medical passageway. It happened to be where the medical department was located. As I'm heading over to, if you're facing the front of the ship, okay, it's the port side, the left side of the ship. I'm heading toward the left side of the ship. I got caught with an explosion head on, knocked me on my butt, blew me a good 10 or 20 feet back. I found out later on I hit a drinking fountain with my shoulder, broke it right off its stanchion. It was one of those little square stand-up drinking fountains. Spun me around, put me face down on the deck, and slid me. And it felt like hot bullets flying over my back from this explosion. And all in my mind, all I could see was a monster, a fire monster eating me. That's what my mind played with me. I picked up my gear. I saw a little light spinning in front of me. It happened to be my helmet blown off in front of me, and it was spinning. And all I kept seeing was a blink, blink, blink. And I thought, that's weird. I kind of grabbed it, and I realized it was my helmet. Got it on my head, and I'm looking around, and then I realized I'm not breathing. My mask that was on my face for my oxygen breathing apparatus, called an OBA, got blown off my face. Okay, I can handle this. I reached down, grabbed the hoses that are hooked to my body from this equipment, and I went to pull that back up, that mask, and the mask was gone. The hoses were there, but they were broken off. There was no mask. It actually broke the mask right off. So I'm sucking in this black toxic, can't see, smoke everywhere. I can hear people screaming. And at one point I realized I was the one screaming, and I kind of shut myself off. I said, shut up. And I'm listening, and I could hear screaming in the background at both ends of this passageway. And I wasn't sure if I was facing the wall or down the passageway or down the passageway. I couldn't tell you which way the passageway was angled to me at that moment. I said, okay, fire training kicks in. Stay low, find out where you're at, and get out of there. And I knew that no matter which way I went, there were stairs going up. And I had to get up out of there because I was down on the second deck. I had to get up to fresh air. That's the only thing in my mind. So I start crawling. And I go maybe, I don't know, 60 feet, 100 feet. And I found a corner. So, okay, I found a corner. I don't know which end I'm going to. I don't know if I'm going port or starboard side, right or left side. I don't know which way I'm going. But I do know that if I can figure out, find a stairwell up. That's all that was in my head. I go around the corner to the right. I go down a little ways. I happen to find out later on, I was actually going back where I came from. Okay, that's how I got spun around. I figured out that I was going back the way I originally started. In my head, I mapped it out pretty quick. And as I ran the corner, I see somebody laying there, and then the person trying to pick them up. And the other guy that was helping pick the person that was down up, the guy that was down, his name was Jonesy. I found out later. He was my E6 out of my own shop. He got knocked out. He hit the wall. He hit it hard. He hit the bulkhead. Boom. Still doesn't give when you hit it. I'm sorry. The guy picking him up was another guy in my department, because he yelled at me, said, it's Jonesy. And I'm still not breathing this whole time. And I'm like coughing and choking and dying. And I can't hardly see now because tears are coming out of my eyes so bad. I mean, it's like toxic. And I'm just looked at him, and I pointed to my face, and he knew I wasn't breathing. I said, and I used my thumb going, let's get him out of here. Let's go. I got to go. We went through one door that was shut. We opened it, came through, shut it behind us. And we're kind of dragging him. We're kind of lifting him, teaming him, dragging him up these stairs and around corners and getting him up. I knew where I was now. For sake of time, I'm not going to detail all of it. But we got him up to the flight deck, and as we cleared out onto the flight deck with his fresh air, I'm going, trying to breathe. And there's people asking me what's going on. And all I said was, explosion. Both sides, trunks full. That means there's people in them. I said, we got to get down there. And I'm trying to breathe. And I literally went over the edge of the ship at this point, and I threw up to clear my system. My head's spinning. I turn around from my perspective, and I found what they call an OBA locker. Oxygen breathing apparatus is the machine I'm wearing. I take the old one off and just dump it on the deck, and I grab another one. And one of my other members of my group that are from my department are saying, "You need medical, sit down, shut up." And I about punched him. I was like, no. I said, "I'm going back." I said, "We got men in those trunks." And I could finally start talking at this point. I says, "We got hose teams in those trunks." I said, "That explosion, I don't know their condition. We got to get them out of there on both sides." And they said, what side? And I said, both. Both sides need to be cleared. I said, "Get people in there now. Pull them out." And like I said, I'm a recruit. I'm a fireman. I'm a new guy. I'm the new guy.
And you were
They're like,
how
"How do
old
you
at
know?"
this time? You're how old?
I must have been 20, 21.
Gosh.
I'm 58 right now. So that tells you this was years ago. So we spent time. I just said, you, and you. And there were guys standing up there in OBAs ready to go in. Guys from my department. They hadn't called general quarters or anything. These are our own people of our department, of repair department, of engineering. And I said, you, and you, come with me now. And I'm putting an OBA on as fast as I can. And I'm trying to resuit and get back in there because these are my friends. These are my brothers. Sorry, it hits me a little emotional.
That's okay. That's part of why we're talking, Bert.
So
To help people understand that, trauma doesn't go away easily.
I know. And right now I'm seeing their faces.
Yeah.
I'm okay. We headed back in. We started pulling people out. Some were hurt more than others. And to give you an idea of the injury that I'm remembering, our own fire marshal lost half his face to an explosion. I mean, he got it burnt off. I'm talking nose melted, ear gone. My buddy, Dewey Bennett, was on the other side I was heading to when that explosion hit. He was standing on a ladder and it blew him 2 decks up, pinned him against the overhead and fried him. He lost both ears, fried off, melted. Nose melted. He survived it. Nobody died in this, but everybody was wounded. We lost, I think, 9 or so members to serious injury, serious burns, broken bones. I was lucky. I cracked some ribs in my back when I hit the fire. So I was fighting to crack ribs in my back. About 2 or 3 ribs got cracked when I hit that drinking fountain. I didn't even know it. Like I said, still doesn't give. Okay. So this whole time I'm trying to breathe and I thought it was just smoke inhalation. I didn't realize I'd cracked ribs I'm dealing with at the same time. And I'm wearing a machine that's strapped on me with straps around my body, over my shoulders and around my back and hooked to me that's pressing on that. So the whole time I'm sitting there trying to breathe. Now these machines are rebreathers. They give you a dose of oxygen out of the machine, out of a catalytic candle. Okay, I don't want to get too deep into it. But as you breathe out your CO2, it scrubs it through a burning catalytic candle and scrubs it and gives you a percentage of fresh oxygen mixed with the rebreathed air. Okay, that's the best I can describe it. I could go deeper into it, but I don't remember some of it. All I know is this machine works. That's the main thing. And you got about a 40 rough minute time period. It has a timer on it. You have to set and all that. Guys that have done it know what I'm talking about. It's got a little bell, a little timer you set. About 30 minutes is about your real safe activative time that you have to work with this machine. The thing is, some of these spaces are so hot, you in reality can't spend more than 4 or 5 minutes in these spaces. You're in an oven. You're in a cave that's on fire. I could actually feel the deck breathing at one point. The tiles we put down on the deck are melting and slipping. The glue that holds them down is melting because there's a fire underneath you. Down below, there's a fire and it's hot. We managed to kick off our systems that we have in place. We have a CO2 system with multiple bottles of CO2 that dump into the space. We found out that everybody was out of the space. So we lit off the CO2 system, completely dumped it into the space, which suppressed the fire. I found out that's what first suppressed the fire before the explosion. The secondary system we have, which is the bigger one actually, is the halon, monobromo trifluoromethane halon system. That one surrounds the fire chemical, the fire molecule. That one actually will keep the fire from booming up unless you open a door or a hatch in letting more air. Boom. Okay, that's actually what the first explosion was, a reflash, a major reflash. Friends of mine that were on the flight deck said a 21-foot high fireball blew out the stacks. That's how they knew we were in real trouble. I didn't see that. I felt it. I was inside the ship when I felt it. That was that first explosion. The boiler casing had lit fire all around the outside. And when the first suppression happened with the CO2, it held all that down. Air got to it, reflashed. That was that first big boom. We lit off the halon system second. Halon system suppressed it all again. We had to open a hatch to get into it. Boom. So I got actually hit with 3 total explosions. The first was the one I just described.
The general public would know that as a backdraft.
It's a backdraft. Exactly. That's what you know it as. Mm-hmm. It was and each backdraft, don't kid yourself. Don't let the name fool you. It's an explosion because it's pressure being sucked in and then it's blown back. And I got hit with 3 of those. First one was head on that I described. Second one, somewhere in the time period of trying to get people out, I got hit from behind, blew me forward into a bulkhead. And I actually cracked 2 fingers. I didn't know at the time I cracked 2 bones in this hand. I got driven into a bulkhead. And we were dragging people out as this was going on. And they kept trying to lock down the hatch. They kept blowing open. The first time it wasn't locked all the way. The team down below apparently opened to enter the space. And there was a lot of events going on all at the same time that caused these things to go boom. Somebody locked it back down. In between opening it from CO2, they locked it back down. Somebody tried to re-enter the space, and we have processes for trying to enter a space that's on fire for this reason. Both sides of the ship, excuse me, my phone's ringing. I'm just going to kill that. Anyway, to make a long story short, for save time, eventually these stopped. Okay. For whatever reason, I don't know all the details. All I know is from my point of view. We got people out. We got all of our people out. The ship now had sounded general quarters. What that means is everybody on board now are firefighters. It's that serious. They called general quarters to all members of the ship. People are running around trying to get to their general quarters stations, suiting up in OBAs, suiting up to fight fire. We know what the animal is. We know what the enemy is. It's fire. So everybody's geared now, and everybody on board's trained basic firefighting. My division is trained advanced firefighting. I didn't know we lost 9 of our members. That's a big loss because we are the experts in putting out fires and handling these things. Here I am in nothing at the time in my mind, and I didn't realize I'm now the expert. I got to lead hose teams into the fight this fire for it lasted about 28 hours. No sleep, no food. We're going back. We're fighting fires constantly throughout this ship. And it's a big ship. I'm going to tell people it's huge. 20 stories tall, almost a quarter mile long. 200, almost 300 feet. It's 280 something feet wide. It's a big ship. And you're fighting fires that are wrapped around different compartments all throughout the middle of that. Side to side, front to back, top to bottom. I know where the bomb storage units are. I know where the fuel storage units are from my training. And this fire's right smack in the middle of it. If any of those light off, our ship's done. And that means our lives end. That's what's going through my mind. The whole time I'm sitting there trying to put up safety barriers of people, systems, trying to block and prevent that fire from getting to these locations. We have multiple ways of doing that. One way was I got into what they call the AFFF pumping stations, the high cap stations. There are multiple of these located around the ship. We have storage tanks of raw AFFF. It's like soap. It's bubbles. It mixes with seawater. It smothers fire. We pump it into spaces. It keeps fuel from burning. And we're dealing with fuel. So we are burning out our pumps, transferring bubbles from side to side, front to back out of these units to pump on this fire. And we got multiple hose teams pumping in different places. That does 2 problems to our ship. It pushes our ship down deeper in the water. it starts tilting our ship because we're pumping bubbles and water into our ship. We want to stay afloat. Well, we're pumping fuel and bubbles, or we're pumping bubbles and water into a ship, and our pumps are going full force trying to pump that out while we're trying to pump it in to smother a fire. So you see the dilemma we're facing. And this is the whole ship fighting this all at once. It's like a bunch of little worker bees trying to keep the beehive afloat.
You're age 21 doing this.
I'm 21, and I'm handling about, in my hose teams, I was running about 100 rough people, between 100 to 200 people at any given time, trying to organize and coordinate this. And the guy that's running the head of the high cap stations keeps yelling at me saying, we need to transfer bubbles from this to that. And I knew what he was talking about. No one else did. So I'm running between host teams and telling officers, keep the men here. Do not keep flooding. Keep them here and only suppress. If a fire erupts, push it back down, shut off. Because if you keep pumping in, we're just going to flood our ship. And once they got that idea, I was running around trying to redirect raw bubbles, raw soap that's not mixed yet, from one location to another to keep, so we have a supply, because that's our only defense. That's our shield. That's all we got. You put raw seawater on fuel, it flashes. It's like putting hot water in hot grease. Don't do it. And I knew this from my training. We had to use bubbles, mix of AFFF, aqueous film forming foam. So we have already exhausted our CO2, exhausted our halon system. We're pumping raw bubbles into a fuel fire, suppressing, and it's working. This is the fight we're doing for about 20 rough hours throughout the ship. Other spaces that are just on fire, we call them alpha fires. Those are ones that are offices that have caught fire, furniture's burning, stuff like that. We have to send in with just raw seawater. And I told them, I said, just put the fire out, keep it knocked down, secure the space. Do not keep pumping water on it. You're flooding our ship. And meanwhile, our main pumps down below that I know about, they're burning up. They're wearing out because we're trying to pump gallons and gallons and hundreds of thousands of gallons of water out of our ship at the same time down in the bilge pumps on each side of this fire. Pumps only last so long. And after that many hours, our AFFF pumps started failing. We couldn't transfer bubbles from side to side, front to back. So, and we were running out of bubbles. We only have 2 tanks that are 10,000 gallons each of raw bubbles. When you mix it with salt water, that 4 times it. So whatever the number is, I'm not good at math, but whatever the number is, we're running out. We were calling in 50-gallon barrels of AFFF from the mainland because we were just off the coast of California. We're out there. People can see us burning. Smoke just pouring off us. Looked like we got bombed. We're flying in every canister of shipboard 50-gallon drum of supply bubbles we could get. These were coming out of ships that were docked in San Diego, mainland, another carrier group that happened to be coming in. We took every gallon of AFFF raw bubbles that day to put our fire out. That's how serious this was. At one point, the captain stated he may even consider abandoning ship. But we kept fighting it. And when we won the battle at the end, we were out all night fighting this fire off the coast, going up and down the coast. And we got this thing knocked out. End result, for time's sake, over 200 people injured, some serious. There was a handful, maybe a couple dozen and a half that were seriously injured. Nobody died. That was a miracle in itself. Our sailors did their job that day. Now, this was back in 88, August 2nd, 3rd of 88. The time frame is important because it led into what we were going to talk about after this.
That's right. So we have a 21-year-old who was in a major situation in the Navy, and then not too long after this. So you didn't have much of a chance to kind of...
year. Is what I'm saying is this is the same year. August was the beginning of a bad year for me. I went through all that. We got the fire out. We pulled back into port, de-smoking everything, hitting it all. Okay, in walk the people who are of the Who-to-be's bosses, all come in. I'm talking about all the investigators come in, find out what happened, how it happened, all that. All I know is by the time I walked back to my sleeping area, we called our berthing area, I'm stepping over people that are asleep on the floor, still just wearing their OBA, some of them. We're exhausted. We're just hitting the floor, falling asleep. We're exhausted. We've got nothing left. I slept on a top bunk at that time. I didn't even climb up in my bunk. I didn't have any energy to climb up there. I literally just turned around, pulled the OBA off, dropped it, and just sat down against some lockers. And I passed out. And I must have slept like that for 4 hours. And when I came to, I was hurting so bad I couldn't hardly move. I was wet from head to toe, stunk like stinky fire, like I'd crawled through a fireplace. And I somehow got enough energy together to go get a bite to eat and head to the showers.
With broken ribs.
I didn't even know my ribs were broken until I went to the medical and said, I'm hurting. I said, I got to check for smoke. I thought it was smoke inhalation. They x-rayed me and said, yeah, you do have smoke inhalation, but you got 3 broken ribs in your back on my right side. My left side.
Yeah.
Wait.
Now, Bert, this is a story in and of itself, but this pales in comparison, in a way, to what then. How soon before you were, and you didn't even know per se that you were being deployed into combat? So
I did not know. I had my paperwork in when this fire kicked off. Now, this is a overlapping thing. I put paperwork in to go to a first tier, level 1 escape and evasion school. I was trying to pad my record for promotional sake. I wanted to say, hey, look, this guy's worth something here. Let's put it toward points, toward promotion. Now, back in these days, like I said, we could cross-train services, Marines with Navy, Air Force, etc. There was a Marine school in Panama for escape and evasion. And I was adventurous. I said, hey, yeah, I'd like to take that school. So I filled out all the paperwork, turned it all in, and I got permission to go. They cut me dummy orders to go, and I was getting ready to go out. And that was at the end of the year. Well, from August, this in November, December, the end of the year is when I got to go to Panama, which takes us into the next evolution of things that came at me. When I flew in, I was supposed to go in and go get set up with other people joining us, formulating the school, and go into this first recruit boot camp level, learn about basic escape and evasion. That was how I was interpreting it. We sat there the first couple days. I sat there for a day and a half. I sat there I arrived. We sat there, and a couple other people showed up. We're waiting. Thought, okay, they're just slow getting started, formulating the classes. But there's only a handful of us there. There wasn't 9 or 10 of us there. We're going, what is going on? Well, in walks I guess he was a Marine. I'm not really up on the Marines. I'm not a Marine. But he had officer's markings. So salute, yes, sir. In walks the brass. And he said, congratulations, guys. You've been volunteered. So we got voluntold, basically. I'm sorry, your school's not going to form. We got this other thing going on. And then they told us we're going to be TAD, temporary assigned duties, to these other units because we're qualified for other things and they're going to use us. I'm sitting there going, okay, this isn't normal. What am I supposed to do with this? So I got assigned to a Marine unit. And I said, how is this possible? I said, Navy, Marines. And he goes, Department of the Navy. Marines are part of the Department of the Navy. I said, that ain't fair. Anyway, that's kind of an inside laughing joke to me because, yeah, he's right. So anyway, I ended up with a Marine unit. I can't remember names. It was so long ago. There was some gunny sergeant there. He said, you stay with me. Don't you leave my side. He said, when I say move, you move. When I say hit the dirt, hit the dirt. And he said, the reason why, I said, how am I with you guys? He goes, Army. You were Army trained. You qualified expert with the M16 in the Army. You qualified expert grenade. He says, you're trained. Come with. Ah, crap. So here I go. I don't really know how to help others other than to say, I understand what fear is. The night of the invasion, we didn't run right in. They had other things on the drawing board that are unknown to me what they're doing. in this country. All I know is I'm stuck with a group of guys who are standing there waiting at the bit to be cut loose to go do their job. I was told my orders are, we're going to be clearing buildings in one sector. We're looking for Panamanian, regular military, and we're going to be neutralizing. We're going to be killing people. And if they don't give up, we kill them. If they give up, we capture and we hold and we take them back for processing. Out of my pay grade. Okay. I'm just the gopher.
How many months after the fire situation on the Saratoga?
The Saratoga fire was different.
No, but how many months? So here you were in this life-threatening situation on an aircraft.
The Saratoga fire, I know this might confuse people. Go back before our engine room fire. We were out at sea trials. Our supply ship, the Saratoga, caught fire. Because of our training, we were actually sent in to help pull people out of that fire and put that fire out, because their whole fire team consisted of only 10 or 12 people. And they were all taken out in the first explosion of their fire.
And then your ship, the aircraft carrier, which?
Then our aircraft carrier caught fire right after that.
And remind me of the name of your ship.
Constellation.
Sorry about that. Okay, that's right.
No.
That's right. So what time frame since the Constellation fire?
You're talking only a 2-month.
Oh gosh.
2-month time period. Yeah, it's short term. I mean, it went boom, boom, boom. I had a bad year. It went boom, boom, boom.
Okay.
I went
Bert, let me do this. We're gonna help people understand then. So you think you're going for school or training, and then all of a sudden you're handed a real life situation.
I'm handed grenades, M16 bullets.
Okay, so I'm going to set the stage. I'm going to set the stage, and what we're going to do, or it is, and we're going to extend this. So we're going to focus right now on part 1. We'll do an extended part 1, and then we will do part 2 at another sitting here very soon, in a day or two. So because we need to give this its just due. So I put together a kind of a couple of videos. So I'm using other people's work to help set the stage for what you encountered, and you're going to kind of walk us through what's coming to mind. So here is what the nation was told.
My fellow citizens, last night I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama. No president takes such action lightly. This morning, I want to tell you what I did and why I did it. For nearly 2 years, the United States, the nations of Latin America and the Caribbean have worked together to resolve the crisis in Panama. The goals of the United States have been to safeguard the lives of Americans, to defend democracy in Panama, to combat drug trafficking, and to protect the integrity of the Panama Canal Treaty.
Yeah, I stopped. The music was placed. So, Bert, what I'd like you to do is, now as you're seeing what you're seeing, talk to us about what is coming up for you, what you're remembering, because you were there. So talk to us. What has just come to mind, having even seen some of the
I was going to say, a lot of these images you're seeing, these soldiers, now they're all from different units, and these are different locations all at once you're seeing. Some are Marine only. There was some Air Force there. There was some Army there, mostly headed by the Marines, though. The group I was with, if you saw the guys on the ground going from door to door, that was more in line with what I was doing. The guys in the trucks and the tanks and the armament, they were a separate unit. They were pushing ahead of us, actually. We come in behind and did mop up.
As a matter of fact, there's going to be a couple of scenes in here that keep kind of a free flow of consciousness here. What's now,
you see these guys right here that are walking in with all the helmets and the lieutenant and see the guy with the bayonet. That was more in line with kind of the group I was with. We were on foot. We were only one sector of this. So some of these I relate to and some of them I really don't. Like the armament section, I can't relate to. I wasn't part of that. Mm-hmm. Anybody you see doing special forces stuff, SEALs or I don't know who else they had there. I know they had SEALs there at one point. I found out later, but we didn't witness any of that. We were going door to door. This was one of the days, car to car. We were searching for people hiding amongst the civilians. We were trying to figure out who was carrying weaponry, armament, drugs, any of that. I don't understand all the politics of this. In fact, I don't know if you can go back on the video just a few frames. Sure. There's a hotel in there with a blue awning. That right there, yeah, you just passed it. If you look at this hotel, this is the area I was in, actually, because I remember that hotel with the blue awning, that one. I was in this area. I couldn't tell you where exactly, but these groups around here, we were taking fire, actually, from Panamanian regular military police or whatever they are. Policia or what, I don't know if they're Noriega's basic group. But yeah, I was somewhere in that area, that vicinity. We were trying to watch our backs. We were catching fire from buildings around us. We knew the main force was out in front of us.
I'm going to go back. As you indicated, or I wish I had more.
That's a good picture right there, because that was exactly the kind of buildings we were going through. We were sweeping them. I do remember that building there. There's another building that was in the area that was on fire. And like I said, so much happened over so much time. Mm-hmm. There were whole city blocks burnt down in some areas. I mean, they devastated some living areas that were, in my opinion, I felt guilty for, because it was overkill. And then there were other areas where we caught a lot of resistance. A lot of these guys that we were capturing, some were civilians who didn't take part in what we would call the enemy, but others were the enemy hiding in amongst them.
So the anxiety levels just...
Oh, it's through the roof. It's through the roof. I mean, your nervousness, and you're on top 100% alert at all times, and it's exhausting. You know what people don't realize, you try to stay on that alert level that long, it just totally drains you. It exhausts you, and it makes you actually paranoid and nervous, and especially when bullets start flying and people. You don't know which side's doing the shooting necessarily. Sometimes it could be somebody in your own group off to one side or the other. Very paranoid, very jumpy, I guess is a good word for it. But you're trying to keep your calm. You're trying to keep your cool, keep a good idea of what's going on around you. But sometimes that bubble around you shrinks. I mean, to within your skin. You don't know what's going on outside of your own skin sometimes, and everything's in fluid motion. These guys moving around, I mean, they're scared. There's no other way to put it. And all you're doing is you're fighting for your buddy next to you. And the hard part for me was I didn't know any of these guys. It's not like I was training with them like I did on the ship, but they were my brothers in arms, So I had mixed emotions about it. I didn't know who to trust. From my point of view, I just kept praying that, hey, they're Americans, I can trust them. But then I saw some travesties happen that I could not believe that some of our own members would pull. Now, I'm not trying to sink anybody's ship. I'm not trying to cause a problem here, but I saw some crap that our own people did that ethically, just absolutely was wrong. And then I saw some other stuff where we stopped some of that unethical activity happen against women and children in certain areas. The thing I hate saying about that is the more we get deeper into the trauma of these events, I never in my life, I grew up believing in the sanctity of life. I grew up with that mindset. I would never harm a woman or a child on purpose. I would never harm an innocent person or family. But yet I found myself in an environment that, and I'm sad to say and sick to my stomach to say, I've had to do that. these people were doing the same game they're playing in our more modern wars. They're hiding amongst the civilians. They're using them as shields. And our own soldiers and sailors and Marines and whoever they are have to go in and weed them out. And yet we make mistakes. We pull the trigger at the wrong time. We hit the button at the wrong time. And then there's some guys that are predators. They'll go in to hurt people on purpose. They just don't care. They've given up the sanctity of life. And the more you're in it, after a while, what happened to me, I'm going to be totally brutally honest. What happened with me was I lost my sanctity of life. And I'm so sick to my stomach to have to say that, but I've have to come to terms with it.
And you were in a span of 3 days.
I was there. This was all in the first day and a half.
First day and a half.
Somewhere in the first day and a half. And I still, it's so much happens so fast that you don't have time to process it. You just move from target to target, building to building. And I couldn't tell you necessarily, I'll never forget my first person I had to kill that I know I killed. Because a lot of times you're throwing bullets around, you don't even know if they're hitting anybody. But you know that first person you kill. And I'll never forget that image. That was kind of the beginning of my descent into whatever trauma-based psychosis, I call it, that I hit. And it got to the point where somewhere in the first day and a half, I reached a point where I just quit caring. I didn't care if I lived. I didn't care if I died. I didn't care if I killed. I didn't care who I killed. The more people I killed, the more I felt like I was winning. And the more people I killed, I felt like I was going to get out of there. The problem is, every time I had to pull that trigger, I think part of it was killing myself emotionally inside. And like I said, I was raised in your normal Christian family where we don't thrive on wanting to hurt anybody. We're not warmongers. I don't want to fight a war. I never did. But my dad was a Vietnam vet of 4 years, and he told me something. He said, if you ever find yourself in combat, he said, you got to think of yourself as already dead and you're fighting to come home alive. Now, people can take that for what they want. My brain kind of switched to that. I just fought to come home alive. I just wanted to go home. I didn't want to be there in the first place. And I knew I had a sense of duty that I would follow the orders and get through it. Or I would die trying. And at 20-something years old, young person, you haven't even begun to live yet. You know, I see that now as an older person. And I did have survivor's remorse. You know, I know people have heard of that. Survivor's guilt. I had a lot of it. I watched guys around me.
It's very real for veterans.
I watched guys around me. 1 minute you're shooting, and all of a sudden you look over and you don't even know when he got shot. You just look over and he's down, dead, you know, and you're like, okay, you know, and you ain't got time to think about it. You just keep suppressing and aimed at the target. You know, that's your mission. You stay on the mission. And afterwards you fall apart. Some guys laugh, some guys cry, some guys shake, some guys cold as ice, and it comes out later somewhere in their life, you know. I watched some of the toughest guys break down crying like babies. I myself broke down and cried many times. You know, I've seen some of the ones you thought that were the most cowardly charge in and take care of business. Then they fell apart later. Some didn't make it at all, you know. Like I said, the first person you kill, you never forget. But then after that, you don't remember anybody. All you see is targets. You just go through it. And some guys can handle it emotionally, or at least they pretend they can. I personally know I can't. I reached a point where life and death meant nothing to me anymore, you know. And because of my religious upbringing, I've wrestled with the whole religious aspect. I took a life. I committed murder. I killed somebody. I'm going to go to hell now for that. But yet I've had so many other theologians tell me the opposite. You know, no, you were doing your duty for your country, blah, 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 blah. So I struggle with that. I still wrestle with that. At those pictures that you were showing, though, that was the area that I was in. It's where that one apartment complex is. Brings back some memories, but they're memories I am already aware of. You were speaking to me about blocking the memories. When I first started talking with you, John, a year or two back, I did not remember a lot of the details that over these last few years, a couple of years, have actually brought up. And I'm starting to remember more of the details. And I'm trying to make friends with it. I'm trying to come to peace with it because it's in the past. I can't change it. My life today is totally different than it was in my 20s. I mean, it's whole life difference. So I'm just, I'm trying to be happy, find peace in my heart now, but I'm still dealing with it. I still have the nightmares. I still wake up some nights sweating and screaming. That's going to be with me.
It's been 40 years.
It's still there. I wanted to touch on one incident I know I've talked with you about that you know your viewers don't know about, and that was the one with the child. Hurting children is the one thing I despise. I would give my life in a heartbeat to save a child. And there was an incident. We were standing in an alleyway with a road in front of us, going side to side, and another alleyway across from us. We saw a 5 or 6 year old little boy looking for his mother in the middle of a shootout in Panama. There were bullets flying from left to right down this road. And the big gun, this is a 50 caliber gun shooting. This is no little BB gun. It's an anti-personnel, anti-equipment gun. As it's shooting down the road this way, we kept trying to tell the little boy to stop. I don't speak Panamanian. I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak any of their language. And we're all yelling at him, no, stay there, stay there. He's safe if he stays back in that, between those buildings. And he saw us. He started running to us across the street. Needless to say, he didn't make it. And a bullet's the size of my thumb is what this gun shoots, maybe a little bigger. That little boy's body went that way down the street, the other way. These bullets were hitting him and just kind of flipping him. Our whole unit lost our minds. We knew we couldn't go this way out to the left and go up toward that truck. So we came back around and we circled the whole block and we went back around through the city. And we're risking getting sniped because they're everywhere up through to our left and in front of us. And we took off around and we started fighting our way through the back alleys and through the back streets. And we found a way to get around behind these guys. And the part I'm talking about with overkill, were we justified? Probably. They had no reason to kill that child. Not like that. But we lit that. It was a truck. It had a 50 caliber sitting on top of it. We call them technicals. It was sitting on top of it, firing down the alleyway at troops we had along that wall, and they were trying to keep us suppressed back. And that kid just happened to run right out in the middle of it. And we came around behind him, and we threw grenades on him. We hit him with law rockets. At the time, we used the law rocket light anti-tank weapon. It's an extendable tube rocket you might have seen in the old movies. We hit him with those. We hit him with everything we had. That truck, anybody in it, it disappeared. We tore that thing apart, and we were still pissed. And that anger is what carried us through probably the rest of the day. We were so upset about that. A lot of us were. Other guys were like, well, that just sucks. That was their attitude. That just happened. Oops. Some guys were at that point where they just didn't care anymore. There were others where we had an incident where I was across the street. We just cleared one set of buildings, and there was a building across the street, and down it was like I guess it was a store or a hotel or something, but it had like a little lobby down there. And I could hear guys yelling, and I'm glad I didn't see it happen, but they were pushing two of our soldiers out, pulling their pants up, and pulled a Panamanian girl out of there. I know what they were doing. You know what they were doing. Had I seen that, if I'd been on that side of the road and seen that, I probably would have shot our own men. That's how serious that is to me. I'm sorry, just because you're at war doesn't give you the right to do that. So I had a lot of conflict going on up here because of things that went against my moral standing at the time. And I was losing that moral standing slowly. Somewhere in all of this chaos and insanity, I lost that moral standing. And I can only guess, the only thing I can come to, the incident that caused me to lose it completely, was we made it up to a rooftop. Across the street is a building, multiple windows, two or 3 stories tall. It's actually 2 stories tall, and then had a roof box kind of house thing, access to the roof up on top. And we're firing across the street, and we're getting shot back at. And we're trying to snipe these guys out that are in there, but we didn't know that they were hiding with civilians in there as well. The guy next to me gets hit. He drops. This is, like I said, the guy next to you will just drop, and you don't even know he's been hit. I look over, and his head's gone. Well, he happened to have a law rocket with him. I just pulled it off of him and standard it out, aimed at the building, and shot right where the shots were coming from. I blew out most of the second floor on one end and part of the bottom. It blew out part of the flooring between those 2 floors. And there happened to be a stairwell inside that went up, and I blew out right above that. I could see there were guys shooting all down the line at those 2 buildings, or at this building, at those 2 floors. We managed to get guys down in there, and I made it across the street, and I got in there as well. And as I come up the stairs and I looked around, just before I went up the stairs, there was a pile of rubble to my left where part of that building had fallen down. There was fires, kind of lingering little fires from it. Tons of smoke. It was just horrible. Dirt, concrete, just stunk. The windows were blown out, and it was just a frame of the building that you could see exposed. And just before I went in, there was a child's body laying here to my right, and it was obviously dead. And the child must have been, I would have to say, maybe a first, second grader. It's just a child, little child, 40 pounds maybe, if it's wet, you know what I mean? But my brain, I was so upset, and I remember it now. I remember doing it even before, but I mean, I remember now that my brain, all I kept thinking is, put another log on the fire. I had given up. And I grabbed this little child, and I tossed it over on that pile of rubble that was burning off to my left. Literally just picked it up, threw it like that, and I said, put another log on the fire. That's where my brain went. Would I do that normally? No. That would be against everything I believe in. Something inside of me had shut down to the point where, to hell with all this. I'm getting out of here alive, and I don't care who I kill doing it. And that's kind of where my brain went. It went to an animalistic state of thinking, you know? And I was still fighting for the guy next to me. I didn't want him to die because he's also backing me up. You know what I mean? But I didn't care about his life. I cared about him being alive so he could protect me. It became a very selfish thing, almost.
And the degree of overwhelm.
I was way overwhelmed.
Bessel van der Kolk uses that term, that it becomes overwhelming. And so what does the mind do? How does it process that?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think my brain was processing anything. It was just going through the motions of survival. It was absolute pure survival. It was just, you ain't killed me yet. I'm going to keep going, and I'm getting out of here. That's all I had in my head. And the more they shot, the more things that happened around me that could have killed me, the madder I got. I got angry. I was like, you sons of, haha, you missed me. Try again, fool. That's kind of how I felt. And the reality is, after a while, part of me wanted to die inside because I felt like I had betrayed everything I'd ever been, my moral standing, everything I ever was raised to be. People say war is hell. And yeah, I believe it because I never could comprehend all of this prior to going through it. And my brain started blocking out events. I think it's a survival technique for the brain. My absolute spirit was crushed. There was no happy. There was no happy anywhere that I could find. And it's taken me years to turn back to my religion, back to believing in God and Christ and all that. Yes, I'm a Christian, believing in all that stuff, to find peace. And the men that go through these things, what's going on now. Okay, we're at the current state where Israel's going through their thing with this Hamas thing. I can relate. I pray for them. Keep your sanity as best you can.
Yeah, the intensity.
You know, on either side. I'm not picking sides. I mean, on either side, keep your sanity, because you know you can't control what the evils men do. And when I got thrust into this is not at all what I was planning to do. It was even in the radar of what could happen. And I knew what I had to do, and I just didn't want to do it. But I was forced into it, because if you don't fight back, you die. I didn't want to die. I had a self-preservation in me that didn't want to die. But yet, emotionally, mentally, part of me did want to die because of the things I had to do. It's like a bad loop.
Right. We only have a couple of minutes left, and you know we need about 5 or 6 or 7 hours, quite frankly, because there's so much. Part of the purpose of this episode, we're going to follow up then with part 2, which will be a different traumatic event that you went through, actually younger, is to help people appreciate not just what veterans go through. Certainly that's part of this. And so we honor those of you that went through, and though, as you're saying, you know, you were just trying to survive, but for those of us that have never been put in harm's way like that, right? For us, it's theoretical.
We don't understand the politics of it, to be honest with you. A lot of the soldiers and sailors and Marines, 9/11 was different because we understood the politics. The guys knew why they were going in and for what reason. You know, it was loud and clear. That's a different mindset.
That's right, and it adds to it. So let me ask, because part of the purpose of this interview, of this discussion, is to help someone that hasn't experienced a significant degree of trauma to really appreciate what the mind does, how it can actually suppress memories. And so of the total time that you were in combat, how much time, and then how much time is it that you remember?
I remember up to the event of me shooting the rocket into the building. Like I said, that's chronologically kind of the end, because after that, I remember vague images in my head of doing things, watching things happen in front of me, throwing grenades down on people that are from off a roof. We were throwing grenades down into the street, blowing people up that were getting ready to come and attack our people. We got across the roof, and I remember those images. I couldn't tell you when that was exactly. It was sometime after the rocket event, though. My mind is still releasing little images of this happening, and I'm going, I remember doing it, but I don't remember doing it.
So of the total amount of time, how long were you in? Because you eventually were bayoneted, as it were.
3 days total.
And you remember approximately how much?
The first day was waiting for our school to form up. The next night is when they came in, and from best I can remember, the next night or so, I might be wrong on that, but we might have been there 2 days. And then that first night that they told us about the invasion going to take place that night, it was going to kick off at a certain time, and it was from the time I was told we're kicking off this thing to the time of me firing that rocket was within a day and a half. Okay. I could have been there 2 days before, waiting for the classes to form up. Like I said, even that's vague to me now, because it's so long ago. But within a day and a half, roughly, all this stuff that I did mention and much more happened in a day and a half. Watching people go in and pull people out, and you know, we did a lot of stuff. But after that, somewhere after that rocket firing, something in my head just said no more. And it just, even though it was happening in front of me, I was seeing it, my brain was not registering it. It was just like, it became such a blur. And the thing that brought me out of that state was I was tired, I was exhausted. And this would have been the following morning, sometime or next day after I'd fired the rocket. all night long, I guess we fought. I don't remember most of that night. I don't remember even that early morning necessarily, but sometime during the next noon hour-ish is whenever we were going in, sweeping a building, and I came around a corner. I was exhausted. My weapon was down. Instead of up at the ready, I bebopped in like a new recruit, and I caught a bayonet in the leg. The guy around the corner from me, I surprised him as much as he surprised me. He was a young kid, no older than I was. He just happened to turn around and stick me in the leg by accident. If he'd have pulled the trigger, my leg would be gone. The guy behind me, all I saw was a pistol come past my face like this, and pop, 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 and the kid dropped. And I'm holding on to an AK-47 enemy weapon, holding on to it. And I wanted to pull the bayonet out. And they said, no, 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 no. And they unhooked it from the weapon, took the weapon away. And this medic is pulling my arms back, not letting me pull this bayonet out of my leg. I said, no, 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 you'll bleed. I'm already bleeding. Leave me alone. You got to understand, by this stage, my elbows, my knees, everything on me is sore. I've been moving and crawling, and my feet are just raw. I mean, I'm exhausted. I didn't care anymore. I wanted to pull the thing out and keep fighting. I was just like, just get me out of here. They said, no, 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 you're getting out of here. I didn't realize they were medevac.
Yeah, they medevac you.
They hit me with lots of morphine. Next thing I know, I'm on a stretcher, and I kind of passed out. And I woke up a little bit on the helicopter. And this is another part of the story we'll touch later on. But the guy on the helicopter medic, is my best friend to this day. I actually reconnected with him later on. And he actually knocked me out on the helicopter to keep me from fighting, because I started lashing out, fighting on the helicopter. He can't have that. So he took his elbow, went smacked me right between the eyes with his elbow pad and got me to the medical ship that was just offshore. And I was on the medical ship for a good day or two that I know of. And then they flew me from there out to my ship, or out to, no, my ship was in port. So they flew me up to another ship and then port. Like I said, it's kind of a blur,
yeah.
But, and they never gave me I got no psychological help with any of this. When I came out, it's just, oh, here you go. You're free to go. You know what I mean?
That's also what's so doubly tragic. The VA apparently is, or the military apparently is trying to do a better job. Bert, so certainly you have raised our awareness to regarding the issue of suppressing of memories when something is traumatic as an adult. We're going to actually listen to your story when we pick up in part 2. When you were younger, you went through a very dramatic situation. But to bring this in to a close, maybe in a minute or two, I'm very mindful that there are going to be veterans or family members of veterans, but let me have you speak to a veteran that has never found a way to process and hasn't really thought about the need for counseling. What would you say to him, about a minute or two, to encourage him to try to get some help?
I went through a period of time after all this where I thought I can handle it. I'm a tough guy. I can handle it. Blah, 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 blah. And I poured myself into a bottle. I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I didn't pour myself into one bottle. I was downing a fifth a day. Everybody knows what a fifth is. That's a lot of alcohol. I was staying drunk all the time. It's the only way I could keep from slitting my wrists or putting a bullet in my brain. That's how bad it was. I knew suicide wasn't an answer due to my religious upbringing. But I dared anybody to just go ahead and kill me because I felt like I deserved it. I felt like I should have died and I have no right to live. And it's taken me a long time to come to that realization that that's how I truly felt. What brought me back, what I would say to him is, it's not necessarily one thing. It's a combination of, where do you spiritually believe? Where is your self-worth? Where do you stand with whatever trauma you're facing? Is it remorse? Is it survivor's guilt? You got to start identifying what it is, and you've got to be willing to be real with yourself first. Because I wasn't real with myself. I thought, oh, come on, what a pansy. Pull up your panties, little girl. Let's get this right. No. Mm-mm. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the littlest guy or the biggest guy. Humans aren't meant to do this to each other. And I had to get help. And I did try to get help in many different places prior to meeting you, John. By the time I met John, I'm going to say this to the public, by the time I met John, I'd started having really bad nightmares. When he first met me, I was kind of a wreck. I was having a lot of emotional problems because it was starting to come back. And I think it's the body's way of purging, mentally and spiritually purging this stuff. My brain said, no, I've held this long enough. It's your turn. And where I am today is the next step beyond that even. If you don't get help and you can't talk about it, that means you're not ready. Your brain will tell you when you're ready, whether you want it or not. Here it comes. And you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to seek help or you're going to slit your wrists. You're going to do one or the other. Now, because of my religious upbringing and my belief in God, that has been the number one. I got to give glory to God. He's the number one reason why I am where I am. Number two is people like John who have turned around and helped talk me through a lot of this stuff to find other ways to mentally put it in some kind of a chronological order or some kind of a real state that I can live with. Like I said, trying to make friends with it. I'm not cured, and I probably will never be cured. It's something I have to learn to accept and live with. It's part of who I am, part of where I've been, and part of who I'll be. But what do I do with it? That's up to me. And using these steps with a therapist, with a religious belief or base, something that is opposite of war, something good, is how you defeat it. I had to go back to learning to love people, and most importantly, forgive and love myself enough to say it's okay. I don't like the things I did. I did some pretty shitty stuff. And like I said, that is the one last hinge pin that I'm still struggling with. But that shitty stuff had happened, whether I wanted it to or not. And so end result is, I would say to my fellow brothers or sisters out there, get help. There are people who love and care enough. Trust them. They're here to help you. You will not fix it yourself. I'm sorry. I don't care how strong you think you are. It will bury you. It will not end well for you. If you value your family, your loved ones, and you need to be around for them, get help. Talk to me, talk to John, talk to anybody. I mean, I'm willing to talk to anybody. And I want to remind them, even if I don't know you personally, and you've been in uniform, you're my brother or you're my sister. And I see it that way. I don't care what the political climate of today is. I could look at a man from World War II or a man from the current Desert Storm or a man from the current Iraq war, whatever. They're all my brothers and sisters. You've been asked to do a job that is harder than any police job, harder than any medic, firefighter, and you did it to the best of your ability. And no matter what the outcome is, win or lose, you're still my brother or sister. And that's how I look at it.
And Bert, we'll put in the show notes in the description of this program that they can contact Survivor Support, and we'll pass that information along to you. We'll pass along the contact information. Okay. Also, we encourage veterans. There is a Department of Defense talk line that is, we'll put that also in the notes. That is, I think, my apologies, I think they call it a warm line, but it's a helpline. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is free of charge. It's available 24/7. So, yeah. Bert, thank you. First of all, thank you for your service, and thank you for being willing to talk about these difficult chapters of your life. You're not finished, because you're going to come back for part 2 and talk about another very difficult situation that will be very instructive for people as far as the issue of repressed memories. Is it possible? Do they actually exist? And you have, even before combat, you experienced something that you had sort of pushed away and it came out. So, Bert, thank you. And we anticipate an equally powerful part 2.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Go. Right. Appreciate it so much.
Thanks for the opportunity, John.
Thank you, Bert.
Okay.
You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, John Euler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, to schedule a personal consultation with John, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with John, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing.